What is the deepest problem of humanity? I think there is this deep desire within every human being to have this sense of aliveness. You could call it power or passion or vigor or purpose or any of those words that sort of point to this deeper satisfaction and fulfillment that we have or that we're chasing after in life. And of course, as humans, we try a lot of different things to try and receive that sort of feeling. And so many things that we try are empty, especially externally. Everything that we try externally is going to end up being empty because it's fleeting. It comes with maybe a large dopamine hit initially, but then it disappears over time. And the more and more we do that thing, the excitement wears off, and it just ends up being something that is sort of flat in terms of liveliness in our life. It's no longer life-giving, but it's time to let that thing go and move on to the next thing. And you get stuck in this cycle of pursuing that sort of inner sense of aliveness through all of these external pursuits and endeavors until, for many human beings, you come to the point of exhaustion. And that's the point where most human beings have the opportunity to look somewhere else for this deeper sense of aliveness and fulfillment and satisfaction and purpose and passion and power and all of that. And that's where you can look inside to find those things. And we find in a lot of different religious teachings this pointing toward inside being the place that we will find that which we're looking for. Christ says the kingdom of heaven is within you. There's a teaching that I've picked up through many Buddhist teachers that talks about the beggar who's sitting on the box. So there's a beggar on a street corner who's sitting on a box and he's constantly asking people for money, which is a metaphor for that external looking and searching for that thing that we really want deeply at our deepest part of our being. And then somebody comes by one day and says, "Hey, what's in the box?" And the beggar says, "I don't know." So he turns around and looks in the box, and it turns out that the box is full of treasure. And that's the metaphor for turning and looking within. And that's what I've found to be true in my life, is that after pursuing all of these different external means of trying to find whatever word, whatever label you want to put on that sort of feeling of deep satisfaction and fulfillment, I found all of that to be empty. And then there was a turning inward in which I found that there was this sort of what I would call an internal guidance system. Or maybe you might call it a human being's connection with the divine. You might call it a still small voice or something along those lines. This system is, if you'll listen to it, it's very subtle, but it's pushing you in the direction of a life that is overflowing with that feeling that I'm talking about. But you have to listen closely to it, and you have to follow its directives. And so many people struggle with that because, one, they're just flying through life too fast, and they're so caught up in these external pursuits that they never slow down enough to actually pay attention to what's going on within them. And number two, a lot of times people are just scared of what's going on within them. There's something that tells us that there is this sort of that it's going to overwhelm us in some way. We can't stop and look at it, and that's why we sort of live our lives in this frantic searching for meaning and purpose and fulfillment externally, because we're so afraid to turn and look within. And really what we find out as we look within, and this doesn't make sense to the person who has never looked within and really figured out what's happening within them, but what we find out is that part of us that's afraid to look within is actually our ego. It's our false self. It's the false image that we present to the world because it's afraid it is going to die if you follow the path of that truer, deeper self, that intuition, that internal guidance system. And it's true because it will. That ego part of you will slowly be chipped away at as you follow the path that this internal guidance system would send you down. But again, there's all sorts of obstacles that will keep you from tuning into that. And all of them are fear-based. It's always a fear that keeps you from turning inward. So I'm afraid that if I turn inward and follow the directive of my internal guidance system, it will cause me material and financial ruin. Or if I turn inward and follow the guidance of my internal guidance system, it will cause me some sort of social or relational ruin. And therefore, I just numb it out and run from it. And many people do this for an entire lifetime. But here's the deal. if you look at the results from doing this for an entire lifetime, you find people as they get into their mid 30s, mid 40s, and so on, all of a sudden life becomes dead for them. It becomes flat. It becomes lifeless. The life that they were living as a young adolescent and child that was so full of life and vibrance and energy is all of a sudden flat. And so they a lot of times what they do is they sort of scramble more, and they try and double down on that external searching and seeking, and it becomes this really sad downward spiral for many people as they progress through life, as they're being drained more and more of that sort of vital life energy that they're so desperately looking for. And then for those who do turn inward and follow that internal guidance system, you see the exact opposite happening. As they get older, they're entering more and more into whatever it is their internal guidance system is guiding them into, and they're becoming more and more alive and free and full of that passion and fulfillment and purpose and vigor. And by the time you get to the age of even 35 for me right now, 37 where I'm at, 45, 55, 65, the gap between those two people becomes so massively large that you have people, they might as well be living on different planets. It's a whole different thing. And that's the goal, right? Like that's why we're here in life, is to chase down that thing. And really it doesn't look like a chasing as much as it looks like a surrender. Because in doing that, you have to surrender to the path that internal guidance system would have you go down. And in doing that, you lose a lot of your preconceived notions about what life should look like and the path that you should be on and what freedom and security and love and all of that shifts for you in pursuit of this. And you have to give up a lot of things that you thought were super valuable that weren't nearly as valuable as what this path is giving you. And it's a beautiful, incredible adventure and journey. But again, so many people are derailed because they're stuck in a cycle of that numbing or avoiding, of not turning inward and just pursuing the externals, and they're trying to convince themselves that they're not, sort of ignoring this when they know somewhere deeply that they are. And you even see it with religion. You see people that are trying to convince themselves that they're following this thing that is within, and so they do all the right things religiously, but they stay stuck in this sort of trying to convince themselves that they're doing it right. And that is a recipe for misery, because again, somewhere deep within, I'm not really following that call. I'm not really answering the call that I was made to answer in this life. And if we're all completely honest with ourselves, it's there on a deep level. When we get quiet in the middle of the night and we have some clarity flash through, it's there. And so often it scares us, and therefore we push it down and we say, nope, I'm not going to go there. That can't be right. I've got to continue to take the steps that society would tell me to take, which again, society and all of those steps are created by mostly people who are following that external path, that path that's going to lead to nowhere, that path that's going to lead to greater misery. However, what that path does is it gives you a false sense of security. It gives you a false sense of safety. It gives you a false sense of significance and makes you think, okay, if I just stay here, I'll have all of these things. And so you become satisfied with this little tiny amount of false security, false safety, false significance. And you say, that's all there is to life. And you don't ever go out and pursue that thing, that something within you that says, I really want this. And that's the big challenge for humanity. It is entering into and onto that path. It is taking the way, as the Tao Te Ching describes it. It is what all of the great religions are pointing to. And it's only a matter of having the clarity and the courage to follow that path in the face of a society that is running the opposite way, which can be very difficult. And so it's really nice to have other people who are following that path as well, who can understand where you're at, what you're doing, who can help you understand, hey, you're not going crazy. This is an incredible pursuit. Go after it with all that you have. Forget what everyone else says. Just keep your head down and keep doing the next right thing on this path.